celebrate our Constitution, the unique document that has set forth the path of our great nation for the last 200 years. We Virginians have very close ties to that Constitution. Our native son, James Madison, was the architect behind it. And another Virginian, George Mason, actually wrote the Virginia Declaration of Rights that is the basis of our Bill of Rights today. So we have a lot to be proud about. But I want to talk to you about what I consider to be the 3 most important words in that legendary document. But before I do, I want to tell you a little bit about how I ended up standing here talking to you guys tonight. You see, for years, I was just like you. I was sitting at home on my couch, yelling at my television, occasionally throwing things. and I'd hear the reports of additional spending in Washington, another corruption scandal inside the Beltway, or another bill that was passed and infringing on my rights in one way or another. And I really just didn't know what to do about it. My sister and I had long ago discussed that the only way to get attention to your cause was to tie yourself to something. We were inspired by a guy who had tied himself to a business in Daytona Beach in order to try to keep it open. And of course, this major news event was covered by 3 cable news networks. The subject came up again later when the car tax was left in place by then full-time Governor Tim Kaine. We were trying to decide if there was a way for us to toss some cars into the river and not have all the environmentalists hunt us down and kill us. We weren't really able to come up with a viable solution at that time, but the message was definitely clear. You had to do something different, something newsworthy to get attention to your cause. There I was complaining and venting to my friends, those that would listen, of course. And a few years ago, one of those friends came to me and he said, you know what, you should start a blog. Now, I'll be honest, at the time, I just thought he was trying to find a polite way to end the conversation. But as it turned out, he actually sent me a link to a blog the next day. I decided why not, and I sat down and wrote my very first blog. It was 1 whole year before I ever logged on to that site again, but I had taken the very first step. And that's kind of what this movement is all about. Taking that first step, only this time we're taking it all together. After that first blog post, I did eventually start regularly blogging and getting more involved. I joined Smart Girls Politics, and in February, I participated in the online tea party that was held. It was then when something stirred in me, a fire was lit, and I realized that it was time for me to take my passion out from behind my computer and off my couch and to put it out into real-life action. So when I heard about the tax day events that were being planned across the nation, I couldn't wait to get involved. I mean, really, we've got a taxpayers' revolt against wasteful government spending. Where do I sign up? Now, some of you may think that last line was a joke, but I assure you it was not. I couldn't wait. And so after just a few emails, I connected with some like-minded individuals in the Richmond area, and we started planning the Richmond Tax Day Tea Party. The success of that event exceeded all of our expectations, and when I think even now about the 5,000 citizens that stood out with me in Kanawha Plaza in Richmond on that rainy and cold night in April, I will tell you that that was what motivated me to keep going. After working with these individuals and many others across the country, I began to realize that I was not alone. I was no longer a woman on an island. There were others like me who still understood the responsibilities outlined for us as citizens in our Constitution. To borrow a line from one of my favorite comedians, Ron White, I told you all of that to tell you this. The 3 most important words in our Constitution are, we the people. Those 3 words are what separate us from all the nations that came before us and what have inspired other nations to be like us. We are fortunate to be citizens of the greatest country in the world because our founding fathers had the foresight to outline and limit the powers of the government over the people. That's what our Constitution is really all about. It's not about defining our rights as a citizen, but it's about limiting the rights of the government to impose upon us. They developed this great concept, this great experiment that is America, a government of the people, by the people, for the people, a nation based on self-governance and personal responsibility. Now, I'm not sure how it happened, and I'm certain that it didn't happen overnight, but at some point in the last 200 years, we the people have dropped the ball. I think part of the problem is the fact that many of us were raised to believe that you don't discuss politics in polite conversation, that the mere mention of the word might make some uncomfortable. And as the old saying goes, out of sight and out of mind, I think that's what happened. As people stopped discussing the issues with their neighbors and with their friends, they felt less and less connected to the process. In this last election, over 40% of Americans chose not to vote at all. Now, think about that. That is almost half the country that has given up not only their right, but their responsibility to vote. I don't know why they've given up these rights, but I think I have an idea. You see, every 4 years you'll hear the term disenfranchised voters being tossed around. But rarely do you hear it in reference to the millions of Americans who have just given up on their government. Because they believe that it doesn't matter which candidate that they vote for, that all politicians are the same. Well, I am here to tell you, we will see a change in the way that politicians behave when we, the people, hold them accountable on Election Day. Now, at some point, some of you are starting to say, well, what about the media? Don't they have some responsibility in this crisis that we find ourselves in? To that I will respond, they are granted freedom of the press. And some of them use their powers for good, and, well, others not so much. But it is still up to us, as we are a nation of personal responsibility, to educate ourselves on the issue. And certainly in this day and age, there is absolutely no excuse not to be informed. We can no longer sit idly by, regardless of our inactivity in the past. We can no longer sit idly by and hope that someone else is going to do it for us. We, the people, must get involved. For too long, we have allowed the political parties and politicians to divide us into groups, whether that be Republicans or Democrats or Libertarians. The list goes on and on. By allowing ourselves to be separated into these labels and these small groups, we've given up the power that we hold when we all stand together united as Americans. You might be thinking, how can we do that? We disagree on so many issues. But do we really? Because I believe that the majority of Americans believe in the value of hard work. They want their hard-earned tax dollars to not be wasted by their government. They want to protect the freedoms that are aligned to us in our Constitution and our rights. Maybe we don't agree on all of the issues, but isn't it time we start looking at the big picture when we look at the future of our country? Over the past 6 months, I've participated and organized several protests and rallies, and at each one I've had someone come up to me and say, I've never done anything like this in my life, but I felt like I had to do something. And that is the spirit that will get us through this. Well, I am here to report tonight, Lynchburg, that Americans are coming off the bench and they are getting in the game. As you listen to the remaining speakers tonight, remember that they have offered up their time and their talents to come here and share their message with you. I would issue a challenge to you. What will you do to continue to spread that message and continue to fight for liberty? Will you go home and will you write letters to your representatives? Will you join a group? Will you volunteer to help out next time? Only you can answer those questions, but we're all counting on you to do it. I'm here to tell you that one person actually can make a difference. I've seen it. But the time to take action is now. We can no longer afford to be complacent. We can no longer wait for someone else to do it for us. We, the people, must take the power back that is rightfully ours from the government, and it all starts with you. Thank you. God bless you, and God bless America.